Hi, good evening. Okay, I will continue from yesterday, which I read halfway. As I was mentioning yesterday, I will stop reading whenever I feel that there's something that I need to digest further after that reading of certain chapter, because then only I straight away can attack the issue and do self coaching. So today is actually look a little, because from page 148 to 163 you're talking about 20 pages. Okay, 18 pages then. 18 pages. But his words is very small, so it's more than normal 18 pages. So anyway, thank you for joining me for your Erroneous Zone by Win W. Dyer. Okay, so we start again from half of the chapter of chapter 7. Chapter 7. Okay, chapter 7. Uh, on breaking the barriers of convention. Continue from yesterday. The folly of shoulds, musts, and oughts. There is a neat word coined by Albert Ellis for the tendency to incorporate shoulds into your life. It is masturbation. You are masturbating whenever you find yourself behaving in ways that you feel you must, even though you might prefer some other form of behavior. Karen Horney, the brilliant psychiatrist, has devoted an entire chapter of neurosis and human growth to this topic, and she titles it The Tyranny of the Should. She comments, the shoulds always produce a feeling of strain, which is all the greater the more a person tries to actualize his shoulds into his behavior. Furthermore, because of externalization, the shoulds always contribute to disturbance in human relations in one way or another. Do shoulds determine much of your life? Do you feel you should be kind to your colleagues, supportive of your spouse, helpful to your children, and always work hard? I just overturned the word shoulds this morning, because I feel that I should not comment without knowing the whole situation, whether it's to pacify a person or to agree with a person. This is something people expect me or feel that I should contribute. But then after I've been reading so many of the books and also on development, then I noticed that there are times that silence is the most powerful tools of all. Just keep quiet when you don't know anything. But then when you are in a managerial or a senior position, if you don't say anything, then they will fall into the culture culprit, which means that number one, you don't know anything. Number two, you are just defining the everything. So this is very different from an individual situation compared to a working situation. So you must know how to use the should and should not, when and where to apply it. Okay. And if at any time you feel in one of these should, do you berate yourself and hence take on the strain and disturbance to which Karen Horney alludes above? But perhaps these are not your shoulds. If in fact they belong to others and you have merely borrowed them, then you are masturbating. There are just as many should nots as there are shoulds. These include you should not be rude, angry, foolish, silly, juvenile, lewd, gloomy, offensive, and scores of others. But you don't have to masturbate. Ever. It's alright to be lacking in composure or to not understand. You are allowed to be undignified if you choose to. No one is keeping score on you or going to punish you for not being something that someone else said you must be. Besides, you can never be anything that you don't want to be all of the time. It is just not possible. Therefore, any shoulds will have to produce strain in you, since you won't be able to fulfill your erroneous expectation. The strain does not result from your undignified, non-supportive, indiscreet, or whatever behavior, but from the imposition of the should. Ethic as should. Ethic is a beautiful example of useless and unhealthy enculturation. Think of all the little meaningless rules you have been encouraged to adopt simply because an Emily Post, Amy Vanderbilt, and Abigail Van Buren has written. has so written, eat your corn on the cob this way. Always wait for the hostess to start before eating. Introduce the man to the woman. Sit on that right side of the church at a wedding. Tip this, wear that, use this word. Don't consult yourself. Look it up in the book. While good manners are certainly appropriate, they simply entail consideration for other people. About 90% of all the ethics guidelines are meaningless rules that are composed arbitrarily at one time. There is no proper way for you. There is only what you decide is right for you. As long as you don't make it hard for others to get along. You can choose how you introduce people, what you tip, what you wear, how you speak, where you sit, how you eat, and so on, strictly on the basis of what you want. Anytime you fall into the trap of what should I wear or how should I do it, you are giving up a chunk of yourself. I'm not making a case here for being a social rebel, since that would be a form of approval seeking through non-conformity, but rather this is a plea for being self rather than over-directed in everyday running of your life. Being true to yourself means being devoid of the need for external support system. Blind obedience to the rules and laws. Some of the most despicable human behavior ever recorded was done under the guise of following orders. The Nazis executed 6 million Jews and murdered and mistreated countless millions of others because it was the law. Later, after the war, responsibility of these acts of barbarism was shifted rapidly up the hierarchy of Nazi power until throughout Germany, the only people who could be held accountable for this heinous crime were Hitler and his chief huntsmen. Everyone else were merely following order and the law of the Third Reich. The Suffolk County, New York, a county spokesman recently explained why people who have been inevitably overcharged on their real estate taxes could not be reimbursed. The law says that past tax bills cannot be re-evaluated once they are paid. It's the law. I can't help it. My job is to enforce it, not to interpret it. Indeed, in another time and another place, he have made an excellent executioner. But you know this refrain, you hear it every day. Don't think, just obey the rules, even if they are absurd. I cannot follow rules. That's why I always very different from the rest of my people. And they just don't see the rationale of going against certain thing that is decided or to present certain thing that they feel right, even though sometimes I also stubbornly think that is wrong. But now I learn how to look it from the other point of view, and it makes a lot of sense. Just give it a try. We cannot go anywhere wrong. I mean, just do it, not give it a try. Just do it. We can only learn more when we make our mistakes, and faster we make the mistake, the faster we earn our money back. At swimming pools, tennis court, and other public places, about half of the rules make no sense. Recently, one hot evening, I asked a group of young people sitting around a pool, obviously thirsting to get in, why they are lounging near the edge when the pool was empty. They responded that it was for adults between 6 and 8 p.m. This was the rules, and despite the fact that no adults wanted to use it, the rules were still being enforced. No flexibility, no ability to alter the rule when circumstances so warrant, simply blind obedience to a rule that had no logical reason at all. When I encouraged them to see some about shifting the rules, I received a phone call from the management telling me that I was promoting insurrection. One of the best examples of blind adherence to the rules, no matter how silly they may be, can be found in the military. A colleague of mine tells of an excellent example of obedience mentality. When stationed at Guam in the South Pacific, he was struck by willingness of many enlisted men to enforce rules that obviously absurd. Officers were permitted to sit on the red benches, which were sheltered and watch the outdoor movies. At the midnight showing of the movie, which officers never attended, there was an enlisted man assigned to ensure that no one sat on the red benches. Thus, each evening you will see a group of enlisted soldiers sitting in the rain with one of their rank guarding a section of empty red benches. to ensure that the rules was followed. When my colleague inquired why such an absurd policy was enforced, he was given the standard answer: I don't make the rule, I just enforce them. Herman Hesse said in Damien, those who are too lazy and comfortable to think for themselves and be better, be their own judge, obey the law. Others sense their own laws within them, things are forbidden to them, that every honorable man will do any day in the year, and other things are allowed to them that are generally despised. Each person must stand on his own feet. If you must comply with all the rules all the time, you are destined to a life of emotional servitude. But our culture teaches us that it is naughty to disobey, that you shouldn't do anything that is against the rules. I remember one person when this word come, so sad. Maybe to her it's not a sad thing because she's just following what she believes. The important thing is that determine for yourself which rules work and are necessary to preserve order in our culture, and which can be broken without harm to yourself or others. There is no percentage in rebelling just for the sake of rebelling, but there are great rewards of being your own person and living your life according to your own standard. Resisting enculturation and traditions when they affect you negatively. Progress, your personally and the world's, depend on unreasonable men rather than people who adapt to their society and accept whatever comes along. Progress depends on individuals who are innovators, who reject convention and fashion their own worlds. In order to shift from coping to doing, you have to learn to resist enculturations and that many pressure to conform. To function fully, a resistance to enculturation is almost a given. You may be viewed by some as insubordinate, which is the price you pay for thinking for yourself. You may be seen as different, be labeled selfish or rebellious, incur disapproval from many normal people, and at times to be ostracized. Some people will not take kindly to your resistance to norms they adopted for themselves. You'll hear the old government, what if everybody decided to obey only the rules they wanted to? What kind of a society will we have then? The simple answer to this, of course, is that everybody won't. Most people's addiction to external support and shoulds prohibit such a stand. What we are talking about here has nothing to do with anarchy. No one wants to destroy society, but many of us would like to give the individual more freedom within it. Freedom from meaningless masks and silly shoulds. Even sensible laws and rules will not apply under every set of circumstances. What we are striving for is choice, that is, the ability to be free from the servant mentality of constant adherence to the shoulds. You do not have to be always as your culture expects you to be. If you are and feel inability to be otherwise, you are indeed a follower, one of a flock who always allows others to determine his course. Leading your own life involves flexibility and repeated personal assessment on how well the rule works at a particular present moment. True, it is often easier to follow, to blindly do as you are told, but once you recognize that the law is there to serve you, not to make you a servant, you can begin to eliminate the masturbation behavior. If you're going to learn to resist enculturation, you'll have to become a struggle. Others will still choose to obey even if it hurts them, and you will have to learn to allow them to their choice. No anger, only your own convictions. A colleague of mine was at the Navy, stationed aboard an aircraft carried home ported in San Francisco at the time of President Eisenhower was visiting Northern California on a political swing. They were commanded to spell out in human formation the word hike, so that the president could look down from his helicopter and view the message. My friend decided the idea was insane and decided not to do it because it conflicted with everything he stood for. But rather than stage a revolt, he simply slipped away for the afternoon and allowed everyone else to participate in this demanding ritual. He passed up his own chance to dot the I in high. No put down of those who choose otherwise. No useless fighting, simply trudging and letting others go their own way. Okay, remind myself, let them be. Resisting enculturation means making decisions for yourself and carrying them out as efficiently and quietly as possible. No bandwagons or hostile demonstration where they will do no good. The foolish rules, traditions, and policies will never go away, but you don't have to be a part of them. Just route as others go through their steep ship motion. If they want to behave that way, fine for them, but that's not for you. To make a fuss is almost always the surest way to incur wrath and create more obstacles for yourself. I just did that. You'll find scores of everyday occurrences where it's easier to circumvent the rule quietly than to start a protest movement. You can decide to be the person who want to be or the one others want you to be. It's up to you. I want to be. Virtually all new ideas which have resulted in change in our society were at one time scorned, and many of them were illegal as well. All progress involved flying in the face of old rules that no longer apply. People ridicule the Edison, Henry Ford's, Einstein, and Wright brothers until they were successful. People are like that. They like to, in Malay we say agong agong kan when you are famous. You know, when they come and how to say. Actually, it's a very good, very common culture practices where people, when you're successful, you have loads of people carrying, you know what, and then when you just slip a bit, wow, you see your circle of so-called friend disappear. So this is the same thing as when you are very different from the rest, because what you are going to do, like me, whatever I do something, I already know what I'm going to do is not going to get any recognition because I'm fighting against the odd. And this is where we will change the concept of business. And also sometimes we fail, sometimes we succeed, but nobody actually knows until you get it done. But most of the time people are afraid to see it being tested. They want somebody to die before them. But when people success before them, then they'll say, I should have done that. So I already no longer in those boat of people. I am moving away from them, and I am only going to enjoy the process. You will meet with contempt too as you begin to resist meaningless policies. Some typical should behaviors. The roll call of have to behaviors could fill an entire book. Here is a sampling of more common example of this action as they surface in our culture. There is too many, so I will just pick a few which is quite common one, like this one. Assuming that certain drinks must go with certain food. White wine must accompany fish and fowl. Red wine must goes only with beef. Being locked into somebody's rules on what to eat with what. Oh, there's some people that's like that. But I drink and eat as long as I like, I will do it. Giving titles to those who serve you, which elevates them by complication to a position higher than you. What do you call your dentist? If his doctor is really just a vocational title. Do you call Carpenter Jones or Plumber Smith? If it is out of respect for his position, what makes you think his position is loftier than yours? If he's paid to serve you, why is it that he gets a title and you get called by your name? Here in our culture, we address people by Injie, Sir, or Mr. or Miss, or 先生 in Mandarin, you know. This is our culture, but it's not a must. So it's just that like the barrier itself, you've been cultivated in culture to say Mr. so and so. So if you don't use the Mr. or Miss, you feel guilty. But over time, you overcome it, you know. Going to bed when it gets to bedtime rather than when you're tired. Selecting roles in daily living because the culture demands it. Women do the dishes, men take out the garbage. Housework is for the wife, outdoor work is for the husband. Boys do this, girls do that. This one also we change already. It's no longer in this culture. We not so much felt in this culture anymore in a Malaysian context or Chinese context, or I will just put it Malaysian context. I'm not too sure about Chinese overall how they deal with it. Because this is mine, okay. Sport fan behavior in which you go crazy over a home team victory or loss, the life vicariously through the accomplishment or the lack of accomplishment of athletes. So these are a few examples. So a look of the common payoffs of masturbation. Some of the reasons you have for hanging on to your shoots are detailed below. These payoffs, like those in all arenas zone, are mostly self-destructive but nevertheless constitute a certain support system of their own. So again, I'll pick a few because he gives too many examples and some are not relevant. Okay, you can take solace in being a good boy or a good girl by following all of your shoots. You can pat yourself on the back of being obedient. This dividend is a regressive one in which you go back to an earlier development period when you were rewarded with approval rather wherever you behave, which means relying on someone else to establish your rules of conduct. External factor. Okay. It's easier to howl or shoot when you lack confidence in yourself. As your self-image wanes, that should becomes your bulwark. You can win approval by conforming. Yeah, most of the time, instead of disagreeing, you agree so that you are accepted in the group. You feel good by fitting in, which is what you were told all along that you should be doing. The old approval seeking need creeps in it as well. So are you the creepy one? I definitely am not one. I either keep quiet now or I just move away if I don't agree. Some strategies for removing some of your shoots. Basically, your chore in scrubbing up this zone involves risk-taking, doing, resolving to be different that the way you've been taught is proper when the way doesn't work for you. Here are some tactics will be helpful in getting out of your masturbatory habits. 1. List all of the rules you abide by which you just don't seem to apply. Those stupid conventional behaviors that you complain about but can't seem to shake. Then make your own rules of conduct that make the greatest amount of sense to you. Write them down even if you don't believe at this time that you are capable of living them out. I will do this, so I will fold this, because I'm still looking for one answer. I still have not found the answer, though I have done some self-coaching after 55 years. What do you expect, right? So I'm not finding the excuse, but I'm making that list. Keep an external journal. Write down your external references in which you assign responsibility to others for how you are feeling. See if you can shift yourself to the internal side with some new acts of courage. Keep track of your success in moving over to internal side. Then refuse to share your rule-breaking behavior with anyone. It is only for you and you don't want to get into an approval-seeking posture in which the reason for resisting enculturation is to win attention and therefore adulation. Okay. Come up with the blame list where you detail everything about yourself that you dislike. It can look like that. What I dislike about me and my life. I'm too fat. What is to blame? Oh, okay. They just blame somebody else. Okay, once you detail it, like for example, I don't feel well, my metabolism, my period, my doctor, my food, you name it. So you're putting a blame to an external source. Now add up your total blame score and see if you are any different now that you have fought and blame appropriately doled out to all the precise person and things that are responsible for your feeling. Isn't that something? You are exactly the same. Whether you blame or don't, you stay as you are. Unless you do something constructive to correct your dislike. You can use this as an exercise in seeing the futility of blaming. Announce out loud that you just blame and that you are working on eliminating this behavior. By stating it is as a goal, you're mindful of your proclivities in this direction. So what I have done now is I just announce outright say, oh, this is external behavior or influence. So what is my internal values? I shouldn't put my happiness in the external influence. So I actually started this when I read about it these 2 days. I think in one of the topic they mention about internal and external, and it's very helpful. It do a lot of self-reflection and is extremely good. Some final thoughts on should behavior. Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote in Literary Ethics in 1838. Men grin and grin in the mouth of truism, and nothing comes out but what was put in. But the moment they desert the tradition of spontaneous thought, then poetry, wit, hope, virtue, learning, anecdote all flock to their aid. What a beautiful thought. Stay with tradition and you ensure that you'll always be the same. But toss it aside and the world is yours to use as creativity as you choose. Become your own judge of your conduct and learn to rely on yourself to make present moment decisions. Cease living through a life of policies and traditions for an answer. Sing your own song of happiness in any way that you choose, oblivious to how it's supposed to be. So interesting, huh? I completed this. So I hope you like what I've read. Thank you.